A Hamas spokesman suggested that they will release 70 hostages for a 5-day pause. Would that be acceptable?
I think you'll understand I'm not going to negotiate in public about such a sensitive matter.
But this, I mean, on principle.
You can ask it a bunch of different ways. I'm just not going to take a negotiation question from the podium.
Can you update us on the status of the pauses? You know, we have had a pause or two. Is that ongoing, or did that stop? What's going on? I mean, from what we see and read and so on, there are no pauses taking place.
There are pauses that are taking place. So this is something the secretary pushed for when we were in Israel. He had very direct conversations with the prime minister about it. You saw him come out and talk about those conversations afterwards. And then over the week, 10 days after we left Israel, you saw Israel begin to implement pauses. And every day they announced pauses in areas to allow the evacuation of civilians along humanitarian corridors. We've said before, we think the pauses ought to be longer. We will continue to engage in conversations about that with the government of Israel.
And one more thing. I mean, since Sunday morning there, Saturday night here, we have not seen any figures released from Shifa Hospital because it's completely out of service. The last count was like 11,087, something like that. Do you have any way of keeping track of the number of Palestinians killed?
We don't. We don't have an accurate assessment or an assessment that we know to be accurate about the number of Palestinians who have been killed. But as the secretary said last week, we know that far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed.
I understand, but with the hospitals out of service, are we likely to know what's going on? How many people have died?
I don't know how I could speak to that from here.
I want to ask about the West Bank, but I can wait.
I mean, go ahead. No, go.
Okay, on the West Bank, very quickly, there's a rampage going on by the army, by the settlers, and so on. Last night they went into Tulkarem, Jenin, and so on. They killed 12 Palestinians or 10 Palestinians. The number has exceeded 200 since October 7, and so on. I mean, just totally sorry. Are you guys concerned? Are you doing anything to make sure that things don't really blow out of hand?
We are very concerned about this issue. You've heard the secretary speak to this. He spoke to it when we were in Israel, in fact. Mm-hmm. The secretary has made very clear that we condemn extremist violence and harassment against Palestinians. He had a very direct conversation with the prime minister about it. What he said to the prime minister and other members of the Israeli war cabinet is that the extremist violence against settlers is unacceptable, that we think the government needs to do more to rein it in, and they need to do more to hold people accountable, and we will be watching to see what steps they take.
Okay, but it has accelerated since this conversation.
I'm telling you, we expect them to take action, and we will be watching to see that they do.